Okay, we're back online and we've circumnavigated the globe successfully.
Yay!
We've started off in New Zealand, and it's very fitting that we end our journey of change in Hawaii for two reasons. One is, like in New Zealand, Hawaii is a land of ancestral cultures, of great geographical presence, of an imprint of nature that takes us into some of the most transcendent feelings and connections that we have, and that's related to education. And also because Susannah is leading the segment. Susannah has been a colleague and a friend for many years, and she is not only a wonderful educator and a visionary educator, but also somebody who's got her heart in her right place. So I couldn't think of anybody better than you, Susannah, to finish our 24-hour journey. Thanks for hosting the segment, and we're all ears now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for inviting me into this conversation and being a part of things. Unfortunately, it is mostly just me today because I'm going to tell stories from all the great things happening in Hawaii, but it's a busy, busy time in Hawaii with the holiday next week for our country and celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day and also just that fall term stuff that happens. So I hope to share the stories the best I can and answer questions and connect people as needed as we go through this. But I'm so grateful to be a part of this conversation and also to even just to be in your presence, Gabrielle. It's very, coming on right after Andre and thinking about that circular mindset around all of this. The great stuff keeps coming back around. And so coming in at the end of the conversation with Ainsley and Andre from Canada and thinking about all of the great vision that we've had over the years has been that was a great way to just even start my morning. So thank you so much for that and for this opportunity. I do have a deck here, so anybody who's watching this asynchronously, please feel free to scan it, take it. There are some live links to particularly research to back up some of the things that I'm talking about and where it's at. But as we were planning for this and thinking about Hawaii being the last leg of the conversation for 24 hours for change in education, yesterday being International World Children's Day, or technically today, depending on how you look at it in the world. But this has been fun. I've had an opportunity to jump onto a lot of the conversations just to listen in because I wanted to see what everybody else was saying and try to anchor the conversation a little bit from that perspective. I'm going to start with a story because that's something that is extremely important in Hawaii and Indigenous cultures. I'll try to move myself around so I'm not in the way of the screen too much, but I want to tell the story of Auntie Pua. Auntie Pua Burgess is a longtime, um, it's beyond educator, beyond thinker, beyond gracious kumu, as we call them here in Hawaii. She, unfortunately, we lost her this year, but I remember the first time hearing her stories, and one of the stories that she told a lot and talked about, which speaks to what I wanted to talk about today, is talking about a story with students in the classroom and a story of gifts. And she was teaching it a part of Hawaii, part of the island of Oahu, which is not necessarily very affluent. There's a lot of challenges in the community there, and for everybody to be able to really do well and to thrive. But it's a very rich and beautiful community, and people come together and take good care of each other. But Auntie Pua was telling the story about it was a Friday afternoon, and she was trying to talk about what was great from the week with her students, and it was a high school classroom, and she kind of was just trying to put a positive end on the week and asked the question of like, what are you great at? And everybody was kind of giving their answers and talking about it. And she noticed one of her students getting kind of upset and angry. And he was sort of just sitting there and he never answered. And the bell rang, class left and was dismissed. And she kind of picked up on it. And the student walked out and she just paused to ask him if he was okay. And he said, "No, I'm not good at anything." And then walked out the door. And those of you educators who are having a chance to listen to this, your heart just sank as mine always does every time I even think about that, because there's nothing we want less as teachers or in the classroom than for a student to walk out not feeling good. And that's the heart of what we do. So Auntie Pua was carrying this with her as she went into her weekend and feeling just horrible and trying to figure out what am I going to do and how am I going to get there in terms of bringing this young man back to feeling good again. How am I going to connect and make sure he knows he's got gifts and strengths? And then, as it is in Hawaii and in a lot of places, there's community overlaps. We're an island and it's very small, even if it feels like a big population, it's not. And so that night, Auntie Pua was out shopping at what is Tamura's. Those of you from Hawaii who are listening to this know that, and you also know this story. But it's she's out at the one of the local markets and shopping, and turned down the aisle, and there was this young man and shopping with his family. And she was nervous because maybe he was still angry, maybe he was still upset, maybe his parents were going to be upset. She was like, "Oh, here I am. It's my Friday night, and I'm going to have this." And all of a sudden, the student comes right up to her, Auntie Pua, Auntie Pua. Actually, Kumu, Kumu, Kumu. I figured it out. I figured out what my gift is. I'm really good at spearfishing. I am at one with the ocean. I went this afternoon after school and was able to catch fish, and we're finding stuff to make for dinner tonight with the family. I'm able to feed my family with this gift that I have and this amazing ability. I just couldn't think of anything related to school. And as you think about that story and hear that, of course, they hugged and Auntie Pua was feeling a lot better. But it's the great story that I like to think of with her. And also when I think about education and what it means to be in this field in Hawaii, especially because everything that we do comes from a place of gifts and strengths. That is who we are. That is part of the aloha mindset. That is part of what matters. And it is something that I have come to hold near and dear to my work over the years as an educator. And even as I travel around the world and go to schools and talk to people in places all over, I always come back around to what are our gifts and strengths? What's in front of us that's important and that we can leverage and carry forward to help to inspire everybody that's around us, including those in our classrooms, right? So this is where I was when I was thinking about this and what am I going to talk about in this conversation. And we'll get to it in a second. I often talk about this business that we're in, human development, but it was really about what's mattering to me right now. And when I think about it in the face of the world that we're facing of challenges as well as rapid technology and change, the conversation I've been having globally around global competencies, and then my personal work, which is individualized learning. And hi, Susannah Johnson, individualized learning. Um, the the things that matter are connection, community, and then what are those competencies? And when you see that word competencies, immediately you go to like skills and standards and things that are there. But I think about it in terms of what does it mean to be a competent human in this world where we live with everybody else. And thanks to AI for helping me do this graphic really quickly as I was thinking about this over the past couple of weeks. Just to give the context of being in Hawaii and thinking about why I'm so grateful to be here, but also I think it's great that Hawaii is in the international conversation and anchoring a conversation that is 24 hours of change and people telling great stories and students sharing their projects and all kinds of inspiring work over the past 24 hours with this event. We're out here in the middle of nowhere, and we are kind of the furthest from anything. We have, great plane access to a lot of things, but even as you can see up in the corner here, there's within our islands, we're separated. We're not connected. It's still a plane ride away to get anywhere that we want to go on the other islands, say for one tiny ferry between Lanai and Maui, but it's always a distance. And so how do you come together as a community when you're always separated? And the answer is really simple. Yay, technology. And also just make it happen. And being together, being a part of a community, feeling connected is what is most indicative of being human. So excited to kind of dig into that a little bit as we talk about it today. I always ask this question. And so if you are just watching this on your own and asynchronously, take it for what it's worth. In this moment, what are you thinking about? I was thinking today about the amazing young people that I've had the opportunity to work with over the years. I am not in the classroom right now. I do global work, working with schools and helping educators and students all over with a lot of different projects. But I'm really, really love every opportunity I have to be with learners. And even yesterday, as I was checking out on the slide deck, I was able to actually be out in some schools, visiting some students that are working on some projects with, I'll share a little bit about it in a little bit in a minute. But what are you thinking about today is really, really important. And it's something you have to answer for yourself all the time in terms of how are you entering into a space. I love when I was listening to, I know this is common practice with New Zealand and Australia, but they start by honoring first the land and the people where they are. And me being a guest in the islands of Hawaii, I am very grateful for that, but I appreciate that. But I know that often they start the conversation with, are you okay? And I love that that's important. So just kind of ask those questions for yourself. What are you really thinking about? Where's your mind at? And then, are you okay? And then imagine just starting every classroom conversation with that. Let yourself sit with that for a second. Pause it if you need to go and answer that for yourself and really consider what's in your heart and mind today. What's on my mind is what I've been hearing over the past 24 hours, in addition to all these students that I've worked with around the world. But these are some of the common themes that I heard. And again, didn't get to listen to all of them yet. I will, because I do think there's value everywhere that we went. But in the pieces that I was able to listen in, I heard conversations around well-being. First and foremost, that was the most common thread that I heard. I heard a lot of conversation about honoring place and culture, which is great. This is when we talk about change in education, those two things alone will really get us where we need to be. Leveraging technology, right? It's here. I heard, I think it was Ben Davies talking about it's not something that's going to be going away anytime soon. And we know that we can't stop it. And we wouldn't want to if we really thought about it, because it's something that is interesting and it's something that's going to take us further. And if we can find a way to do it in a kind and humane way for the betterment of humanity, we're going to be in a good place, right? So it's really about how do we do that. I heard a lot of conversation about whole families being involved, parent involvement. There's some really cool stories about direct communication on a regular basis with families and making it so that it's not this kind of combative or, worrisome thing that we do. It's just part of our process. Real world, authentic, and solutionary thinking and mindsets, which I'm excited to talk a little bit more about today too. Learners first, and through it all, I heard student-centered, I heard student-driven, I heard personalized, I heard some differentiated, but everybody who knows me knows that it really is about how do we make sure that the learning journey is truly that owned by the learner and a part of them. Love that conversation. Leveling access for all learners, that's something that's always near and dear to my heart, especially in the US. We really don't do a good job of making sure that everybody has equal footing to start off with. And we wonder why we have an increasingly ridiculous disparity of wealth in our nation. That's why not everybody has access to the same things as it comes to this piece that we're in, which is human development. And then I love the cultivating curiosity, and just coming on in that last session and hearing it yesterday and then hearing it in just the session before mine was really fun to be. This is something that is uniquely human, and so I'm glad to hear that being a part of the conversation. So this is what we've heard that needs to happen, and this is what quality education looks like around the world. What's it look like from my perspective in Hawaii and what we're seeing here? I always start with this question too. This is the after, are you okay? And what are you thinking about? We have to think about what our purpose is and why we're doing this thing called school. If we have education, we need to know what it is. And I really appreciate Andre talking about coming back to that sense of purpose. It's something that is near and dear to my heart, and some extra work that I'm doing in addition to my individualized learning work. We need to make sure that everybody has a really strong sense of connection, not just the learners, but every single person who walks into the walls of our schools. We should really be careful that we have a connection to our sense of purpose. So I encourage you to consider that question for yourself as well. This is the key for me, though. This is the number one thing that I like to talk about all the time. And it was born out of the conversations we had 5 years ago when the world was shut down. We are in the business of human development. And it's very important that we think about it as a business, because we don't talk enough about that. We try to pretend like everybody's going to make changes happen or do new things just for the love of it. And that's all well and good, but no other industry in the world works that way. We are not incentivizing our amazing quality, innovative educators. We make it hard actually for anybody to try something new. So I think it's important for us to think about what are we doing in this business, but it is the business of human development. It's not about any one piece of knowledge. It's not about everybody getting to grade level of any one subject or content piece. It really has to do with what are we doing to develop humanity? And if we think about it from those terms, it just becomes very clear, because I always want to think about who do I want to live alongside in my world. And I could care less if you could name all of the countries of the world and their capitals. I could care less if you can successfully execute the quadratic equation. What I care about is, are you kind? Are you living a life of purpose? Are you helping and supporting the world that we live in? Are you taking good care of the planet, right? Like, what does it mean to be a good human is the essential question of education. So I hope that that's something that can resonate and that we can start to build on as we continue to think about where we need to go for education. That's my essential question right there. So how might we then embrace this constant change for a brighter now and future world? This is it. Everything is changing at a rapid pace. I'm going to talk very briefly about that, but you all know it. It's not hard to see. The rate of change of chip technology is a number that I can't even understand or fathom, 10 to the 10th something. It's crazy, crazy quickly how things change in technology. And on a daily basis, it's kind of the very sad and funny thing, especially in the United States right now, of every day there's a piece of news that's just like, okay, what's new today? What's changed today that's going to rock my world or somebody else's world in a very major way? So we need to figure out how we can get comfortable with that change pace and still have the hope that Andre was talking about or Ainsley was talking about. Really important to find a way for a brighter now and future world. I heard a lot of conversation over the past 24 hours in segments of people saying we need to be able to prepare kids for the future and for the future. Well, we're already so far behind. When you look at the data, kids that are getting out in the world now are nowhere near prepared for the world that they already live in, let alone 5 years from now or 10 years from now. We cannot predict what the future is going to be in any way, shape, or form. We didn't know 5 years ago that AI would be everything and everywhere and everybody would have access to it, right? It's only 3 years old. So we've really got to think about how are we getting comfortable with this rapid pace of change in a way that can be bright and positive and effective for good humanity. Collective purpose. This is hopefully what is your purpose in education? This is what I hope we have. What do we want human development to look like? We need to understand how kids learn, and we know a lot about that. We've got amazing data on the neuroscience of learning. I heard a session, there was a gentleman, I think, speaking from Singapore, maybe. Can't remember which hour it was, but very, very excited to hear him talking about the brain plasticity and the fact that no two brains are alike. That's something that I use a lot in my work with individualized learning practices. But we know how we learn, and we are absolutely not doing a good job of making that happen. The what is a big question for everybody. What should everybody be learning? What is the content and what are the skills? And so we have to think about those collective purposes. If we can answer these questions, we can build the best education model for everybody, anywhere. My hopeful aims, this is what I'm looking for in the world, again, moving myself around on the screen, that we have human development over schools, that we're looking at global competencies over scores, and that we really make time, energy, and space in the day for the things that matter. The global competencies conversation we're going to talk about in just a second, but those are the key things there, right? How are we as a community, how are we doing good quality critical thinking, and how are we becoming compassionate people? For me also, I'm very deeply embedded in all of the things I continue to learn on a daily basis from the amazing Indigenous people of Hawaii, bringing aloha to the world and then inviting the world into aloha. And I'm going to talk about that in some of the projects that I share. But it's really important to understand. Everybody knows aloha if you've ever even thought about or heard Hawaii, and it's hello, goodbye, love. That's how it is. There are actually 123 meanings for the word, which is a tremendous thing to even grasp. I've only tapped the surface, even just barely scratched the surface of what aloha means, but 123 different words or meanings for the same word means that aloha is so many things, and all of it has to do with being good and kind and an amazing human being. So keep that as the nugget that you hold. That's what I'm after. How can we be great human beings? But let's talk a little bit about education as human development. I'm going to go really quickly through this because it's kind of all there if you have questions or you want to talk with me more deeply about this. But it's really important to understand where we've been to think about where we want to be. So again, in this business of human development that we're in, that's what we're talking about. That's our business. That rapid pace of change, just knowing how different it is, not just from my childhood and when I was going to school, but even 5 years ago, what school looked like prior to COVID and the world shutting down, prior to AI taking over in the way that it has. What did the world look like in terms of education? And it's very, very easy to see how fast it's changed. One of the things that I think we're just starting to tap on the surface, and I heard a little bit of it in a conversation yesterday. I can't remember which one, Gabriel, but there's some talk about what the roadblock of parents in education. And I understand that. I feel it. I certainly have experienced it along the way. Every parent sends their student or their child to school to help that they learn, and also because they have this hope of them having a great future. And a big problem that we have is that in a lot of parents' minds, what education looks like is what they went through. And they managed to do okay. They got out. A lot of them very successful. They have a life, they have a career, whatever. They've got a house. But that's not the world that our young people live in today. It's not the same. We don't need the same things. We aren't talking about the same things. Their world is extremely more complex in a lot of different ways than ours was. And so when I hear that conversation, always, when I go to places, offer the conversation with parents. I'm happy to add on any place I go in the world a night to just have a talk with parents. And I recently was able to talk to about 800 parents online in Taiwan when I was there for work in June. And it's great to be able to talk about this, that you know that the world is different. Why would you want your student, your child, to be trying to prepare for something that doesn't exist anymore, right? So it's an easy conversation. It's a little bit of pulling and loving along, and it's also a lot of trust. If we can build quality relationships within our communities, within our school communities, and our parents and teachers, then we're going to end up in a space where we can talk about these hard things and say, what do you really want for your child? And let go of that. So that's something that's important in the rapid pace of change, and a way to remove that roadblock if we're talking about how to change education. Just get into it together, dispel and disperse some of the fears through conversation. We've evolved. I love this because this is what the world looked like when the system of education that most of us know, the industrialized model of education, started. We were going to places in a horse and buggy if we were lucky. Most of it was on foot, and we just had the inklings of telephones. And when we think about that compared to the world that we live in now, where cars are driving themselves and everybody has a computer at the palm of their hands, we know that things need to be different and it has to be there. Anytime I walk into a school or a classroom and I see it looking exactly the same as not only it did when I went to school many, many, many years ago, but probably all the way through 100 years ago, it's really important to say, you whatever you want for change, first we have to really look at what does this look like and what is this model. It's one of my great appreciations, Gabrielle, of your school, the global school that you started, in terms of the space. Always, it just felt very inviting as well as inspiring and open and creative. And that's something that is important for the world that we live in now. Creativity is a much more marketable skill than anything else we've taught in terms of content. Um, don't have to touch on this. I think a lot of educators have been talking about this a lot, but I want to make it really clear. I'm a fan. I think it's important for us to be leveraging the technology that comes across our path. I also really appreciate it when somebody brings a new, food into my life. Like, it's really, how do we get to grow and learn and experience and explore? And I think if we can figure out the best way to leverage the technology as humans, then we're going to be in a good space, right? And we're in that right now. I'm going to point to some work that I used to partner with What School Could Be. And this is one of my very favorite videos about what does it mean to be, getting into the workspace. That was a conversation I heard over the past 24 hours too. Getting our kids ready for the workforce. Well, what does that really mean right now? And the little video that's linked in there, take a look at it. It'll help to get you in the right frame of mind of what the world of work looks like. But I have a couple of thoughts and quotes just on the AI, just from my perspective, just so that it's there. Great episode, Ezra Klein, talking about learning and not being replaced by AI, but maybe being replaced by somebody who knows how to use it. So that's just a little nod to the fact that you can be anti-AI for as long as you want. It's not going to go away. So you might want to really consider, what does that mean? But of course, I want to give a shout out to our host and friend, because for me, he's written the two best books on AI that I've read so far. And I've read a lot of them, but really about how are we looking at it from the ethical perspective, and then also how to access it easily. So those of you who are watching this on your own, this is the just quick nod to that. But I have this slide up on almost all of my presentations these days. So I really wanted to just kind of include it here, because it is important for us to think about that it's our duty to inspire students to pursue a life of learning, and AI is the ultimate enabler. So thanks, Gabriel, for those books and for the easy access that you've given people for this work. I'm going to talk about global competencies because it's super, super important in this conversation, and it's what I've been spending a lot of my time and work on. These are the four things. I did a lot of research over the past 18 months on what are the global competencies, what are there, but what the world needs now, according to many, many, many sources, are these four things. We need critical thinking. Big fan of that. Myself, I partner with the Foundation for Critical Thinking and have come back around to that work in a big way this year because starting from a place of critical thinking and imagining what we're trying to learn, what we're trying to do, especially with everybody being so keen on project-based learning, how do you start from a place where the work is about the thinking and then pop it into AI to see what comes back out, what else can be enhanced, how can you organize it, what are maybe some different ways to look at it or different sources, and bring it back out of AI and critically think about it again. So that ability to have criticality around what we're knowing and what we're doing and what we're learning is really important. So that's essential. Compassion, it's missing. It's just the biggest void. It is the biggest deficit that we have worldwide. And I can say that having been to over a dozen countries in the past year and a half, it's really important to understand that we as humans need to consider what does it mean to be compassionate. Something here in Hawaii that is it's a requirement. So that's one of the reasons why I feel so good about being the anchor and also being in this conversation and being in Hawaii to do this work. And even as I am always thinking about the whole world of education, I'm happy to be grounded here and that this is my land that I'm standing on because we embody compassion. And anybody who doesn't last very long in whatever they're trying to do. So it's really embedded in the way that we live here. That's one of the key meanings of aloha. So it's just ingrained in everything we do. Curiosity, loved hearing that conversation, Ainsley and Andre talking about it, but just like if we can continue to invoke that, if we can continue to foster that instead of killing it. We're on what, the 25th year anniversary or 24th year anniversary of Ken Robinson's most watched TED Talk, do schools kill creativity? And the answer is still yes. And that's really hard and sad. When I think about the curiosity that I see in my great nephew who's 4 and is just cannot stop being excited, getting ideas, having a strong imagination, just a short amount of time of him being in preschool, it started to slow down already. And it's really hard to watch and to see. So we're just, how do we fix that? How do we change that? And then adaptability. It's a very important component that we have not been talking about. We don't need to be experts where we sit in one spot with a great body of knowledge and execute work for 20 or 30 years of a career anymore. Everything changes so much. The most important skill that we can have is our ability to adapt to those changes and to grow our knowledge and to take whatever foundational great content or information that we have, expertise that we have, and continuously grow and adapt on it. And I think about that in terms of 30 years ago, watching my father, who was an architect and had, learned drafting by pencil, of course, and drafting papers in the offices on the weekends, teaching himself how to use CAD because he saw it as this thing in the future. And then years later, when he was managing teams and had young architects coming up and they all had only learned CAD, anytime they had to draw on the cusp or they had to adjust things, they couldn't figure out how to do that. So that ability to adapt to what's come before and also what comes after is really key and essential. This is from the OECD and the Center for Global Education. This is what they've identified as the core key aspects of global competence. And this is what they expect for globally competent youth. Being able to investigate the world beyond what's right in front of them, being able to understand, appreciate perspectives and worldviews, communicating ideas effectively and also with diverse audiences. So open, appropriate, effective interactions across cultures, essential. And then taking action for collective well-being and sustainable development. So already from these slides that we've seen, there's nothing in there about we need to know everyone should have the quadratic equation by the time they are 13. Everyone should be able to speak fluent Spanish as well as English, as well as whatever their native language is by the time they're 16. This is not anything that we see in global competencies. When we look at it from what the world needs in terms of the workforce and in terms of education, we need these things. Final piece of the puzzle on the global skills and where it is. This is a great episode of Getting Smart, excellent podcast, but these are the ones that were identified by them. Again, the closest thing that we have on this list of what we should be teaching and what schools should be for and about, the only thing that's even close is technological literacy. It doesn't even say actual literacy. Big reader, big writer. So I absolutely think we should be, learning how to read and write. But the long and the short of it is that we know for sure, in terms of how we learn, that language acquisition comes from having people talk to us, reading stories, and if that's happening, the reading will get there. Even with diverse learners, my most of my time in the classroom was really working with diverse learners, and so understanding the neurodiversity, dyslexia, universal design learning practices, all of that stuff is very important. But even dyslexic learners, when they get really motivated, will figure it out and they'll work their way through. It's exhausting and takes them extra time, but they will do it when it's something that's important to them. So I think it's important for us to be thinking about these global skills and where we're at. So in terms of what we want school to be, this is our list. How are we ensuring that we have all of these essential global skills at the heart of what we're doing? Briefly on our challenging world, only because I think it's important to put a nod to this. And I really loved learning this information, the study when I was in Australia last year. Great organization that works on just a lot of data and understanding. It's the Sydney Executive Plus and the very comprehensive academic study of what the world is dealing with. And so in terms of the challenges of the world, we know what they are, but seeing them altogether really had an impact on me. We have a really big value shift, and that's fragmenting expectations. So people really don't have the same values anymore, and that's something that we have to consider. I don't think that was true even 100 years ago. Even with our differences in country and culture and religion, we really still thought it's important to be a good person. And we've lost some of that right now. We're so busy trying to be right that we've lost what it means to be a good person versus being right. Technology, we never could have predicted this, and it's amazing to see, but it's caused us to have some really strong conversations. We really need to make sure we have some ethical, deep conversations about the direction and what are we going to do. Andre made a nod to, I don't know if AI will ever have emotions or be able to think about emotions, but somehow, some way it might. And let's figure out how to make sure that it's on being a good person versus on being the dark side of things, right? Accountability, because of our access to technology, we can hide behind screens, we can hide behind paper. We don't have to actually say things out loud, and that causes us to maybe have a little less accountability. We don't have trust. I think that that's really essential, especially when we look at schools. Schools have lost, they aren't trusted by their communities anymore. It's very hard to justify and say we're doing right because everybody can see that it's not working. But that's not because the schools aren't trying. Every educator, every school I've been to really is trying to figure this out. And so I think that if we can even just start from that, maybe trust that your school and your teachers are really trying to do the right thing instead of giving them a hard time as part of the community, that's something to consider too. And then the energy shift, of course, there is this transition of energy, and I'm talking about actual energy of the world, right? And our running out of energy and finding alternative energy sources, but also our human energy. We don't really know what's happening there. So this is what the world is kind of worried about. We're in what they call the decade of disruption. But disruption can also bring about great change, right? Some of the best art, some of the best innovation in the world has happened in times of disruption. How can we leverage this really difficult, challenging time and move towards a future that is bright and exciting and positive? How can we shift our minds towards a more utopian hope versus the dystopian hope, right? And again, thanks AI for the amazing images that I could never draw or create myself. And then you can do this for yourself and make your own. What's the world that you want to live in? What's the world that you think would be great? And we really are on this cusp of this. And we really do have the opportunity to come to a utopian future versus a dystopian future. Go ahead and reread those books about all of this and see where the shifts are and see where you could see some things that you could do differently to shift your mindset and hope for a better future. In the face of AI, for me, these are the things that I see as our purpose with AI being there, right? The conversation I was in Taiwan this year, plus in New York, right before that, all about AI. Everybody's talking about this and what does it mean and how do we do this? And really, it comes back to what do we as humans have that the computers don't? This is what we have. We have our creativity. It's can be falsely assumed, just like I said, AI making those images for me, it can create those things in a way, but it has to start with my imagination. it doesn't ever come from itself, right? And so creativity is something that is inherently human, that is our goal and our purpose. And when I think about our purpose as educators, that's number one. I don't know an educator that's not creative. Even the most like straightforward by the book educators have to find ways to be creative at some point. And so kudos to you as an educator, and pat yourself on the back for that, and maybe lean into that as the thing that you're trying to focus on, because it's what makes us great. Cultural threads, our ability to look at the past, present, and future, and have these long things. We talk about it in Hawaii as 7 generations, right? And so what was happening 7 generations ago that was great that we could maybe learn from? What did we do in those 7 generations to maybe lose something that was important to us? And how can we, within the next 7 generations, make it great again, or improve upon, or get there? The picture that you see here, these are pictures from us working at one of the local fish ponds, and talk a little bit about it in another segment in just a second. But the Hawaii fish ponds, being able to feed our island without having to import everything that we have is a big question, a big concern. We really had a hard time during COVID because we weren't getting everything that we needed. It was harder to get supplies, and it really made us reminded us that we needed to be thinking about how we're going to feed ourselves. There's a great, amazing human, Herb Lee, who is a professor at UH and also has done some amazing stuff. But 40 years ago, he started an organization to try to restore the fish ponds. And what you see there is some young people and adults working together recently. We were just in there clearing out things and working on the fish ponds, and we're really close to being able to have working fish ponds again. And that was something that was just indigenous knowledge. And so there's not technology, it's not new stuff to make it great. It is all ancient Hawaiian practices regenerating this land and this area to be able to solve a problem that we have right now. Amazing thinking. Connection as humans, again, this is something that the computers can't do, and we're starting to see, even though there are stories of people having relationships and stuff with AI, that's not a reality, and that's not something that will ever amount to true fulfillment as a human being. We need other humans. That's just something that we know to be true. And then, of course, critical thinking. This is a skill that can be taught. If you want to shift your focuses for the next years just to find a way through this hard time, focus on critical thinking and call me. I'll work on it with you with your school. Like, how do you just do explicit direct instruction of this? Many tools and resources, again, with the Foundation for Critical Thinking as well. So highly encourage that as part of our mindset. I'm going to talk about connection and share some more stories about like what's happening. Just coming back around a few years ago, we did this conversation, Gabriel and I was talking about how we have to stay connected even though we're islands. We are one state and we are one school district. That is something that is very important to understand. So when there's a conversation about our Board of Education or Department of Education, it affects every single student in Hawaii. And these are the numbers from years ago. I just pulled these slides directly from then to be able to talk about it. But what's great is that our independent schools, our public charter schools, and then our public schools all work together on a regular basis to be able to have conversations, to learn from each other, to grow with each other, and to support each other. It's amazing. The heads of these 3 organizations get together on a regular basis, a monthly basis, to have a conversation. And how are you doing? And what are you grappling with? And what are some ideas that you're getting to? They all had a huge conversation recently about AI, this about 6 months ago. Big convening of like, what does this mean collectively, not separate, right? So there's a way for us to be connected and to share our ideas, even when we are not connected geographically, right? So if we can do it, anybody can do it. We have this diversity of different values. We are still a very tremendous melting pot in comparison to a lot of other places, especially in the US. We are welcoming, we're a sanctuary, and we have a lot of cultures working in the same space. We also have a lot of disparity of challenges and what people are dealing with. There's the beautiful, iconic Waikiki, and if you're looking at that, I'm actually right there on the backside of Diamond Head right now talking to you. That's where my house is. But then there are folks that are having whole communities that are on the beach and without any resources, right? But we have so much history and so many values that are helping us to do this. We're really always thinking about how can we support this and how can we make sure that things come together. That's what Hawaii is dealing with, and that's what we're grappling with. Our challenges, of course, the economic disparity is pretty much the #1 problem that we have here in Hawaii. That, and of course, understanding climate change and land challenges. That's not a small thing when you're an island. The connections of innovation, I want to really point to the emerging, or not emerging, the long-standing now schools of the future that got started, the Hawaii Community Foundation and the Hawaii Association of Independent Schools and the Department of Education all come together to put on this conference every year. Couple thousand or more educators from all of the islands, and everybody comes, and a good, I would say 60 to 70% of the reason they show up is to connect. And the rest of it is new knowledge, new ideas, inspiration, opportunities to share resources and strategies. That stuff all happens too. But this long-standing great conference that happens in Hawaii every year is a way that we stay connected on a regular basis. Plus, we have a lot of different smaller organizations, such as the Hawaii Society for Technology and Education, making sure that we're mirroring like what ISTE does internationally, but for all of Hawaii, and how are we connecting our technology and ideas and resources and all of that. And then the leaders. And I talked a little bit about this, but we have a lot of different ways that these leaders come together on a regular basis. And inspiring leaders really comes down to helping to grapple with the challenges. And my favorite is that a lot of these, like I love the picture of the amazing leaders at the top. We were all sharing a conversation at PBS one night. And these are some of the very important heavy lifters in Hawaii sitting there with their amazing Sesame Street animals. So kind of fun to think about how we connect and make space for the leaders to talk to each other and support each other as they move forward. Teachers connecting as well. Again, the conference, we have our ed camps, we have Kupuho Academy, this great institution from within. PBL Works is a long-standing piece of what's happened here in Hawaii. But everybody kind of talks on a regular basis with different initiatives to make sure that we can move forward. We also make sure that we connect the community and the culture. What you see in that graphic there is actually what our statewide expectations are. So this is sort of the values statewide in the public schools. And we start with the HA, which is breath, and that's where everything is centered around how are we doing? And when you ask somebody, how are they breathing? It's not like are you actually breathing? Because we hope you're breathing if you're standing there. But it's how are you breathing in terms of how are you internally okay? Like, is your breathing okay? Is it calm? Is it real? It's a wellness thing that is embedded in everything that we do here in Hawaii. And I think as I heard these conversations around well-being from New Zealand, Australia, Singapore, Dubai, Canada, it's really, everybody wants this. And so it's something that we embody. And what if these values were the values that existed globally in all schools? I think we do okay. Maybe understanding that sense of Hawaii would be a challenge, but I would love to see it. Again, connecting community and culture. I just like wanted to give a nod to how a lot of the work that happens in education in Hawaii is interlaced with the businesses of Hawaii. We have a lot of really strong mentorship and apprenticeship programs. The local businesses, all of them are really deeply embedded and connected in what's happening with education. Funding crosses all paths. It's a very important piece of the puzzle. So when I think about communities that really struggle and schools of excellence that are just having a hard time, I think, how are you doing with your local community and your local businesses? Do they know what you're doing? Do they know how awesome you are? Are they supporting you? Are they telling you what they need for the workforce that they want to have coming out of the schools? Great questions to ask and great ways to bring that forward. Talk a little bit about connection and my conversation around harmony. I talk a lot about how my two reasons for doing what I do, first and foremost, critical thinking. I get out of bed every day because I want to live in a world of better thinkers. And so it's always going to be a part of every work engagement that I have, everything that I do. But the harmony piece has become increasingly important to me over the years of harmony with self, harmony with others, and then harmony with the planet. That's how I think about it. And how can we do that in a way that is humane? I personally spend a lot of time partnering with the Institute for Humane Education. They are spending a lot of their time at the GLOW conference the past couple of days sharing what they're doing. But we've had some opportunities to work with them. Zawal put this book together. That was her first book. She's got a new one out that's called The Solutionary Way. If you've got this on your own time and asynchronously, pop into that video to understand what they do. But really what they're doing is trying to help educators come up with ways to increase purpose with project-based learning for solutions for the world. It's a very amazing and straightforward process that they do. They've got a micro-credential course that really works as well as a master's program. It's based on these steps for how they're putting together this 4-phase process for solutionary. So you can see it's super easy. Build those 12 things within the 4 main categories and you're set. You've got a great thing. So highly encourage spending some time with them. But we had an opportunity to have a solutionary micro-credential course with a group of Hawaii educators. And it was super fun for me to be able to hear those stories and help them come up with some fun things. My very favorite of those projects was a school that's not far actually from my house, my neighborhood here. And these young 4th graders were trying to figure out how do they make their school feel more welcoming. And I
You know,
thought
we
that was
had,
an, oh,
just
sorry.
sorry to interrupt. We had Shay Asensio,
Oh,
who
Shay,
works.
that's
Yeah, Shay
right.
was.
Yes, that's right. She was
Yeah, she was
on with,
there.
yes.
She was
Okay,
on
so
with
she
Peter.
talked a lot about this. So good.
No, no,
Go
no,
back
no.
and
But
look at Shay's, but Shay's done amazing work. I actually had the opportunity to meet Shay in Egypt this year of all places. We're both there talking. She was talking about the well-being piece and that social emotional component of learning database and but she does this work also with the Institute for Humane Education. I think she's actually presenting with that conference too. So she's a busy lady. But it's great work. Anyway, so these students they decided they wanted to do something to inspire their campus. They came together, they they went and looked at it, they came up with ideas, and then they started talking to people around the community. This is what it means to find solutions. And if 4th graders can do it, anybody can do it. So really important way to think about not just those. I think project-based learning is there in the world. We know it, and so many people are doing it, but are they doing it well? And are they doing it with a sense of purpose? And are they doing it with some really good structures that make sure that the projects aren't just projects for project's sake, right? It's projects with a purpose. That's what I like to point to and why it's important here. But it's that mindset of things can be better and things can be fixed. And I love seeing the different projects in Hawaii around it. The Institute for Humane Education often leans heavily on this. I do too. I think it's a great place to start in the conversation of we are all connected in these global goals. If we were thinking about these things collectively all the time, we would have solved these problems by now. And where are the huge tasks for us that are coming together and doing it? Well, a lot of it's happening through the UN. They're providing a lot of opportunity for that. But how could we maybe bring this into our schools and have some more connections with schools of how do we ensure that there's zero hunger in your community in Buenos Aires and my community here in Honolulu, Hawaii? So ways that we could really connect for better purpose and stronger purpose. These are some of the projects that we came up with and making sure, but just to kind of give an example of what they were working on, these are projects that were developed by the students. They decided what they were going to work on. They decided what was important to them. They were able to execute these projects and bring them into effect in a strong way based on the processes from the Institute for Humane Education. So big shout out to those teachers who have taken that step and those students who are doing that work and making sure that things are happening. Community. Again, 7 generations. We're going to run out of time in a second, so I'm going to go fast, but I want to talk about one of my favorite initiatives that I'm working on right now. It's just in the 2nd year of the Hawaii Center for Youth Philanthropy. And oftentimes when you hear the word philanthropy, you have a lot of ideas of what it means or giving money, or it's a wealthy person's game and problem. But what's happening with this organization is that these funders came together and said, we don't know what needs to be solved. We don't know what's important to this community. We need to have it be from the youth. So the board is made up of all youth, and there are just a handful of us adults who are there to support the process and be there for them along the way. But it's really driven by what is important to them. This mission was born out of them. So they wrote that mission through a lot of iterations and coming together, but making sure that it's about developing mindsets versus a spirit of, I've got money, I'm going to give it, or I'm going to come in as a savior for a place, right? It's like, how do we serve our own communities on a regular basis to ensure that everybody is doing okay? How are we taking care of our whole community? And the key thing that I love here, this generous spirit must be sparked and nurtured from a young age. And this is it's one of our work days together with the HCYP and one of the young sisters who had come out to see what was happening. And she was hanging out and working with us for the day. It was amazing to see. It's not that hard. If she can do it, we can all do it. We talk about in HCYP the philanthropic mindsets, and these are our ways of knowing, doing, and being. And this is all born out of Hawaiian values, which brings us back full circle to what New Zealanders and Australians were talking about and what you were just talking about with Andre. We've got to really think about the values that already exist and lean into that as a way to move forward for what's best for our communities, including our communities of education. We have our ecosystems, we have the past as the guide. These are important pieces, like what does this look like? And also what can we learn from the past? Viva is the key thing though. Comes back around to the Antepua story. I love this the most. It's probably the one that is easiest for me to talk about because we start from this, but we seek understanding of how communities self-define value, worth, and wealth for themselves, including and especially as those definitions compete against dominant mainstream narratives of wealth. And so if you do nothing else after this conversation with me, spend some time thinking about what are your gifts and strengths? What are the gifts and strengths of your community? And how can you lean into that as a way of knowing how you can support yourself and the community and move forward within your schools, within your processes? How are you ensuring that it's coming from a place of strengths, right? Aina rooted is land based, so just to kind of bring that around and make sure that you understand that knowledge. Makavalu is also our many ways of knowing, doing, and seeing, and that it's not just about what is on paper. How can we show evidence of great human development slash education that has nothing to do with numbers on a page? Because that's the bottom line. We're looking at the wrong things if it's there, right? For us, it's all about making sure it's a foundation of Polina. Polina is relationships and trust. And so again, if you're trying to figure out how to solve problems in your school or how to move forward in your educational process, start from that place of strength and honor the vibe that already exists in your community and have deep conversations to build trust, right? You can see this here with everybody kind of coming together, and just a shout out to Uncle Herb down in the bottom right-hand corner. Bracing radical change. And then I promise to be quiet, Gabrielle. I know we're at time and you're tired. So I promise to be done really quickly here, but this is it. If there's nothing else that you do over the next year to change education, just find a way to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's a mantra that I've lived by my whole life, and now it's serving me extremely well. Of everything changes on a regular basis. How do we get comfortable with that and just get used to changing? Coming back around to those global competencies, and adaptability is a key piece there. So we've got to make sure that we can find our way through to what does that mean for us in a way that's effective. I'm going to leave this one as a non-thing to think about, but again, we know that the brain is always adapting. So why can't the rest of us be adapting too? Shout out to the neuroscientists that help us with that. Come back around if you're taking your time on this and looking at this segment on your own. On the happy face, there's a link to a study about happiness. And when I heard everybody in the 24 hours talking about the well-being of their learners, I was happy to hear that. At least we're moving towards that. If you're doing nothing else, make sure that everybody in your school, whole community, is happy as much as possible. That's a huge thing. I'm going to also skip over my own learning objectives and what I want for the future, but I encourage you to come back around to them. As we end this 24 hours of change in education, what are the objectives that we are seeing everywhere? What are we hearing from everybody that is already working and that is showing some thriving points that we could learn from, draw from, right? How can you lean into what you've heard over the past 24 hours to be able to foster the things that we need, those key global competencies? Curiosity and imagination at the top of that list. Also going to skip over this pieces, but this is my own little nod to how we should be learning. And I think it should be all of these things, the amazing AI images that were there, just the idea of if you wanted to learn something like paragliding, you wouldn't go about it by walking into a classroom. You get inspired by seeing somebody doing it, and then you would research it, spend some time online looking it up and trying to figure it out. And then you'd move into a space of what does this maybe look like for me? Maybe I'm going to go learn more. Maybe I'm going to go to a school and learn it with some instructors, and then I'm going to go try it and do it. How do we naturally learn? And that's important for us when we think about how we move forward in education. Our ecosystems, what our school ecosystem is, what our community ecosystem is, what our global ecosystem is. Think about that. What kind of a space are you cultivating? What helps everyone and everything to thrive and be its best versus taking and plundering and making things go away? I have a whole story about ecosystems and reefs that we'll skip because we're out of time. But also think about our planetary evolution. And there's a great example of an evolutionary thinker who talks about being able to, like a raindrop, when it hits a puddle and the rain comes to this puddle, it's going to fill up that puddle. The water droplets don't know that the puddle is not all that there is. But if those same raindrops landed in the ocean, they would understand that possibility. And so I would encourage school leaders as they're thinking about change, don't carve out a puddle space, don't carve out a divot in the ground for everybody to fit into any one year. Think about how you can evolve in a way that is expansive, where the raindrops are falling in the ocean instead of the puddle, and all that comes along with that. And then letting yourself evolve as an educator, right? We are no longer answer givers. Step into that possibility of what it means to be uncomfortable. Step into, I don't know. Make sure that you're supporting partnerships and liberated mindsets in the classroom. Provide safety, comfort, consistency in relationships, and then be guardians of good critical thinking and hope. That's our role. We don't have to be gatekeepers of knowledge anymore. We can't be. I don't have any way of knowing all the things that are there. And no test that exists in the world is going to be able to tell me if you're a good human or not. It's only going to tell me if you can hold information for a short amount of time. So keep all of that in mind in terms of how we evolve ourselves. Call me if you want some help with evolving the roles of your educators. Sense of purpose, and then I promise to wrap it up. One of the things I think about when you're trying to figure out how you're moving forward, I do some work with some partners called Mission Realized, where we're trying to help schools step into their missions and make them dynamics and think about, is your mission an anchor and holding you back from moving forward in this rapid pace of change that we have? Or is it a keel? And if you don't know sailboats and understanding, the keel is the thing that is just holding the boat just barely on balance as it moves swiftly across the water, right? So think about it in terms of what you're trying to do. What is your sense of purpose, and how can you move towards having a mission that is a keel, or a sense of a vision for your school that is a keel versus an anchor holding you back, and embracing that future. Gonna skip through this stuff too. My favorite book in the past year, in addition to Gabriel's books, is Jane McGonigal's Imaginable and Future Thinking. And just imagine what didn't exist 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and how much the world has changed. Play with some of the examples that they have in there. She has great future scenarios in terms of what are possibilities and ways to think about it. How can we gamify education in a way, right? Making sure that we are moving towards a flexible, free range, clearly connected, purposeful, communal, place-based, humane, solutionary, strength-based, all of these things type of education. What could it be? What if school were a place where all of these things were true, where we were absolutely ensuring that kids are engaged and that they're gaining essential skills? What if they were always curious? What if they were always using technology to augment their learning versus leaning on it as a cheat? Something to consider. Take it home if you want to. Something that you want for yourself and what's on your horizon. Again, if you're looking at this on your own, pause, answer these questions. And if you can't, then maybe it's time to really rethink what you're doing as an educator and what your own sense of purpose is, and how you can come back around to these things that you care about, and your passion for education. What kind of a world could we live in if we let ourselves be expansive and full of possibility and hope and collaborative and cooperative and curious? Find somebody to talk to. If you don't have somebody that you can talk to about your change of innovation, find some accountability partners. Call me if you need to. Have somebody that can hold you accountable for what you're trying to do as you move forward as well. And move from a reflective place into your places of action, and making sure that you are able to take what you've heard over the past 24 hours and challenge and unlearn something for yourself. And how are you going to take that with you moving forward to cultivate a mindset of inquiry, empathy, innovation, something that will work for all of us, as well as, most of all, connecting, of course, with everybody around the world. So thanks, Gabriel, for bringing us all together to be able to do this. Those of you who are doing this on your own time, please take a second to look at this video, and just one example of an amazing little project in Hawaii, really grounded and rooted in what we believe in and what we care about. But I am super grateful to be a part of this conversation. I'm extremely grateful to you, Gabriel, for staying up for 24 hours. I don't know how you do it, but I am impressed by
That's
it and I love it.
we educators haven't slept for worse reasons than this. So it's
That's right.
yeah.
I'm
So
excited
thank
for
you,
you to be
Susanna. That
able to
was
go to sleep in just a second
nah.
here.
That's fine.
Yes.
That's fine.
Super, super, super important. I'm going to leave this here just so that it's on the screen and you're recording, so that you've got it. And those of you who
Yeah.
are there, and make sure this is what I believe and what we should be working towards. This is my great HCYP team at the end of last year, celebrating all of our hard work together. So super fun stuff, but also a beautiful and inspiring place. And in Hawaii, this is something that we do always. We always, always, always come back around to the land. And when we can't figure something out, we go outside, we look at the sky, we look at our ocean, we look at each other, and we take a deep breath and we move forward from there. So next time you're in one of those terrible faculty meetings or having a really tough day or you can't figure out like what's going on, kids are having a hard time, everybody's having a rough time, one of those terrible classroom moments, just get up and walk outside. Even if it's cold, they do it in Finland, they can do it everywhere else, right? So walk
Mhm.
outside, take a deep breath, look at each other, look at the sky, and imagine better for all of us. Thanks, Gabriel, for inspiring all of us to have
Oh, thank
better.
you. Thank you. It was a wonderful presentation. It was an unbelievably broad and comprehensive summary of everything
Sorry.
we've heard. No, no,
I was
seriously.
up all
J-
night talking about it or
No,
watching
no,
the events,
seriously. You
and
couldn't
so
have
I
done
got
it better. It
excited.
was no, no, there are so many things to unpack in there. So, just by watching this segment, this is like we don't need to do a summary now. We don't need to do any. You were better than any AI. Before we leave,
Oh,
Susanna, I need to ask
yes.
you a question, which
Yes,
is
sir.
we kind of asked it to almost everybody in the segments, at least the ones who we could relate to. Um, how was your own journey? How was your own awakening from being a quote unquote conventional teacher to first your journey in terms of individualized learning and now this new and more profound awareness of what the world needs in education?
Thanks. It's a great question, and it starts with the fact that I was never a conventional educator. I came from the business world and dropped into education, so I had a whole different mindset already, right? I didn't have a good time in school. I was the very bored learner, didn't find any deep sense of purpose in what I was learning. So I was not a good learner, regardless of my abilities and my desire and curiosity. But when became a teacher, when I was in the classroom and I kind of was getting the hang of it for a while, I remember one day looking out and seeing just that sea of faces. I was a high school teacher, and there was just kind of that like nobody was negative, nobody was angry or mad, but they certainly weren't like happy, excited, or engaged. And I thought, that's not how I want them to feel when they're in my presence. Like I don't want my classroom to feel like this. And so the next day I scrapped the lesson and just sat everybody down and was like, all right, guys, like we need to do better. What would make sense to you? And just that one moment of taking a pause out of my plan, my curriculum, my ideas to ask them what they needed to feel better about learning and being in the classroom changed everything that I do. And that's where Individualized Realized was born. Because from that minute on, I started piecing in what they wanted and moved it into a strong practice I developed over 8 years, and implemented 100% individualized learning in the classroom based on just that one conversation. And how do we do this? And so by the time I was leaving the classroom, it was a fully individualized program and class. I had 54 students and 76 different curricula all in the same room at the same time. Our only anchor content was critical thinking, and we didn't even have AI to use for all of this stuff now. It's so the work is so much easier now. Call me if you want
Coming
it.
soon,
It's
right?
yeah,
Coming soon,
coming
the
soon.
AI
Yes,
version.
yes, yes. The book is getting there. And then you and I working on a digital toolkit for that too. But it's really it's even easier now that we have AI, but really it came out of that. And so from that minute on, it was how do I make sure that every learner gets to be in charge of their own learning journey? Because it was amazing to see what happened. It was way better, way more positivity, possibility, hope. I was learning from them. We were working on it together. It was a co-working mindset. And then once I was out in the world and had the opportunity to go to different schools and try to bring that individualized process and personalized learning strategies to everybody that I was working with, I started to see the common threads of like everybody kind of wants the same things, but we're not talking about it. And I've moved into the global competencies a little bit more because of that. But it's fun to see that critical thinking is still there because that's so important to me and it's the anchor. So that feels like a natural piece. Making sure that we are maximizing our time in schools. Individualized learning is a great pathway to that. So that's easy to keep going. And then all of these pieces of connecting with our place and our culture and our community and our humanity, that all fits too. So the work I do with Institute for Humane Education and ACYP and a few other organizations is it's all the same stuff. It's really just like, how do we get into the business of human development? How do we develop better humans? Right. So,
No, and I think the reason why what you do is so unique is that it's not just about technique. It's not just about a pedagogical idea. You've always been very, very vocal, very passionate about how individualized learning can take you to a deeper sense of purpose, as we were saying,
as a
in our
human,
yeah, as a human, and how that can unlock potential. Be mindful of your identity, your self-esteem, So there's a lot of that underneath the whole
Right.
concept of individualized learning, and because I feel that uh, the conversation around personalized learning can be very superficial,
That's
and
right.
it's more about catering to learning styles. But there's a lot more depth in
Yeah.
helping each student achieve their own potential through individual learning. So thank
Yeah.
you, Susanna.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. It was again,
Thank
it's
you.
a very an extraordinary summary of all that we've been through. Um, Again, we are breaking the sequential nature of our project right now, right here, when we press stop, and this becomes a succession of streaming videos.
Yes.
Thanks a million. Thanks to my team, Victor and Vale, who are listening there in the sidelines, and
Thank
they've
you.
worked long and hard to make this happen. And let me just say that because of people like you and all the other educators that shared the space with us, this is not the end, but just the beginning.
That's right. I love it. Thank you so much for what you do. And I'm just the only person in the room with you, but I know that around the world everybody is cheering and shouting and thanking you. And so grateful, Gabriel, that you take the effort and the time to make sure that we stay not just moving forward and inspired, but that we do it collectively. I love that. And so thank you so much for doing that and for being who you are and for all that you do and for all the educators that took time out in the
Yep.
24 hours
Yeah,
to have
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
conversation. Thank